The winter wind howled like a banshee through the skeletal branches of the Snowdrop Orphanage, blanketing the grounds in a shroud of pristine snow. It was on this fateful night in 1932 that matron Eliza Form discovered the horror. The lifeless body of Sir Reginald Blackwood, the orphanage's wealthy benefactor, sprawled in the frozen garden, a single snowdrop flower clutched in his rigid hand, its petals stained crimson with blood from the dagger wound in his chest. No footprints marred the snow around him, save his own. Who could have slain him in this locked sanctuary of lost children? The whispers of the orphans echoed. The ghost of the orphanage has returned. Hercule Poirot, the famed Belgian detective, would soon unravel the threads of this impossible crime, but not before the shadows deepened and secrets spilled like ink on fresh parchment. Chapter 1. The Call to Arms. The winter of 1932 had clamped its icy fingers around London, and in the cosy confines of Hercule Poirot's flat at Whitehaven Mansions, the fire crackled with a defiant warmth. The Belgian detective, immaculate as ever in his pinstriped suit, adjusted his meticulously waxed moustache in the oval mirror above the mantelpiece. His grey eyes, sharp as a falcon's, reflected the dancing flames, but his mind was elsewhere, contemplating the orderly symmetry of human affairs, or the chaos that so often disrupted it. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows like a restless spirit seeking entry. It was a night for mysteries, though Poirot could not yet know the labyrinthine puzzle awaiting him. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's steadfast companion, burst through the door, his face flushed from the cold and his overcoat dusted with snowflakes. In his gloved hand he clutched a telegram, its edges crumpled from his eager grip. "Poirot, old chap!" he exclaimed, his voice a mix of excitement and urgency. "Urgent summons from Inspector Japp. There's been a murder at the Snowdrop Orphanage in Sussex. The victim's a bigwig, Sir Reginald Blackwood, no less, found stabbed in the snow. And here's the kicker, no footprints around him, save his own. It's one of your locked room puzzles."
Like a devil of a case, Poirot. The orphanage is remote, locked tight as a drum, and yet someone got to him. Japp's at his wit's end. Poirot rose, brushing an invisible speck from his sleeve. "Then we must assist our dear inspector. A man of Blackwood's stature, philanthropist, benefactor, such a one does not die by accident. There are motives, Hastings. Always motives. Greed, vengeance, betrayal. These are the threads we shall weave into order." We depart at once. Within the hour, Poirot and Hastings will aboard a train rattling through the frost-laced Sussex countryside. The landscape beyond the window was a monochrome tapestry of snow-covered fields and skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the grey sky. Poirot, wrapped in a heavy overcoat, gazed out with an air of serene contemplation, his gloved fingers tapping rhythmically on the armrest. Hastings, ever the contrast, fidgeted, his mind racing with possibilities. "It's eerie, Poirot," he said, breaking the silence. "A man like Blackwood, funding an orphanage, struck down in such a place. Who'd want him dead? And how'd they manage it without leaving a trace?" Poirot tilted his head, a faint smile playing beneath his moustache. "Patience, mon ami. The absence of traces is itself a trace. The snow, it tells a story, but we must read it with care. Blackwood's philanthropy, perhaps it was not so pure as it seems. Men of wealth often wear masks, no? We shall see what lies beneath." The train pulled into a small, windswept station, where a police car awaited to ferry them to the orphanage. The drive was brief but bleak, the road winding through hills blanketed in snow, the air thick with the promise of more to come. The Snowdrop Orphanage loomed into view like a Gothic sentinel, its stone facade weathered by time and etched with creeping ivy. Tall, narrow windows stared down like unblinking eyes, and the iron gates creaked ominously as they opened. Hastings shivered, though whether from cold or foreboding he could not say. Inspector Japp met them at the entrance, his ruddy face set in a scowl beneath his bowler hat. "Glad you're here, Poirot," he said gruffly, shaking.
Found. The body itself had been moved to the parlour for examination, but Japp described the scene. Blackwood sprawled face up, a dagger wound in his chest, a snowdrop flower clutched in his right hand, its delicate white petals stained crimson with blood. "The flower's odd," Japp added. "Plucked from the greenhouse maybe, but the door was locked. Key in Blackwood's pocket." Poirot knelt beside the spot, now marked by a chalk outline, and studied the snow with meticulous care. "The footprints. They are deep, purposeful. He walked here alone, yes? But no others approach or depart, and yet a dagger does not wield itself." He rose, brushing snow from his knees. "The snowdrop, symbol of purity, of hope. A curious choice for a dying man to hold, or perhaps not his choice at all." Japp led them inside to the parlour, where Blackwood's body lay on a table, covered save for his face, which bore a grimace of shock. Poirot examined the wound closely, noting a faint smudge around it, a residue like ink, barely visible against the blood. "Curieux," he murmured. "This ink, it is not from the blood. It is deliberate, perhaps. A message?" Before Japp could respond, he outlined the suspects. "We've got 5 main ones, all with reason to dislike Blackwood. First, matron Eliza Thorne. Runs the place like a drill sergeant. Been here 20 years, but Blackwood was auditing her books, rumours of mismanagement. Second, Dr. Elias Crowe, visiting physician. Shifty sort. Owed Blackwood money from gambling debts. Third, Miss Lydia Hale. Young teacher, sweet but nervous. She was close to Blackwood. Maybe too close. Fourth, Oliver Trent, groundskeeper. Former orphan here. Blackwood refused him adoption years ago. Bad blood there. And last, Lady Victoria Blackwood, the victim's estranged wife. Showed up yesterday, claiming reconciliation, but I smell inheritance." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A fine cast of characters, Inspector. Each with a motive, each with secrets. And the orphanage itself, what of its history?" Japp, but I assured him all was in order. Next they spoke with Dr. Crowe in the infirmary, a gaunt man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose. His fingers twitched as he spoke. "I prescribed sedatives for Sir Reginald's insomnia. He was agitated last night, muttering about betrayal. I was tending a sick child during the murder, alone, I'm afraid." His alibi was weak, and Poirot noted a faint ink stain on his cuff. Miss Lydia Hale, barely 25, met them in the schoolroom, her auburn hair framing a pale, anxious face. "Sir Reginald was kind to us," she said softly, "but I heard him arguing in his study yesterday, angry voices, though I couldn't tell with whom." Her hands trembled, and Poirot sensed fear beneath her words. Oliver Trent, the groundskeeper, was last. A broad-shouldered youth with scarred hands and a sullen demeanour. "I shovelled the paths that morning," he growled. "Garden was locked when Blackwood took his walk. I didn't see him after." His resentment was palpable, but he denied murder. As evening fell, the orphanage grew colder, its corridors echoing with the whispers of children. Poirot and Hastings retired to guest rooms, the wind shrieking outside. "It's a devil of a puzzle, Poirot," Hastings said, warming his hands by the fire. "No tracks, no weapon, and everyone's got a reason to hate Blackwood. What do you make of it?" Poirot tapped his temple. "The little grey cells, they are at work. The ink, the flower, the locked gate, these are pieces of a mosaic. But there is something we have not yet seen." His voice trailed off as a piercing scream shattered the night, echoing from the upper floors. Hastings leapt up. "Good Lord, what now?" Poirot's eyes narrowed.
The game. It begins in earnest. They hurried toward the sound, the shadows of the orphanage closing in around them. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The scream tore through the Snowdrop Orphanage like a blade through silk, sharp and chilling against the silence of the snow-muffled night. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings raced up the creaking staircase, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous halls. The air wavered, and her hands shook as she smoothed the girl's hair. "It's nothing, really. Just childish fears." Poirot knelt beside Annie, his demeanor softening. "Ma petite, tell me of this ghost." His tone was gentle, but his gray eyes scanned her face with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a gem. Annie sniffled, clutching a threadbare blanket. "I saw it, sir. In my dream it was in the garden where Sir Reginald died. A shadow with no face, holding a flower." Her small voice quivered, and the other children whispered, their eyes darting to the darkened corners. Hastings frowned, his practical mind bristling. "Ghosts, Poirot? Surely it's just the shock of the murder. Children's imaginations run wild." Poirot rose, brushing his knees. "Perhaps, mon ami. But the imagination often reflects what the eyes have seen but the mind cannot yet grasp. Mademoiselle Hale, you were here when the scream occurred?" "Yes," Lydia replied, standing. "I was checking on the children. They've been restless since Sir Reginald." Her gaze flickered to the floor, avoiding Poirot's scrutiny. "Bon, we shall speak more later." Poirot turned to the children. "To bed, mes enfants. The night holds no terrors that the morning cannot banish." His words, delivered with quiet authority, calmed the group, and Lydia ushered them back to their cots. As they descended to the main hall, Hastings muttered, "That scream gave me the shivers, Poirot. Do you think there's anything to this ghost nonsense?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Nonsense, Hastings? No. Every tale, even the wildest, contains a grain of truth. We must sift it carefully." Inspector Japp awaited them in the parlor, where a fire roared against the January chill. "Just a kid's nightmare," he grumbled, warming his hands. "But it's got everyone jumpy. Let's talk suspects. I want your thoughts, Poirot." They settled into high-backed chairs, the room's heavy drapes muffling the wind's howl. Japp produced a notebook. "May God send to these children. He founded this place after his daughter Emily died of influenza in 1918. He visited monthly, ensuring funds were allocated correctly. But," she hesitated, then continued, "he recently questioned my management, said there were discrepancies in the books. I assured him all was well, but he was insistent." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "Discrepancies? Of what nature?" "Minor errors," Thorne said quickly. "A few pounds unaccounted for, clerical mistakes. I was correcting them when he died." Her fingers twitched, and Poirot noted a faint tremor. "And your whereabouts last night, madame?" "I was in my office, preparing reports, until I found him during my rounds at midnight. Alone, I'm afraid." Her alibi was thin, and Poirot's gaze lingered on her calloused hands. "Strong enough to wield a dagger?" Hastings interjected. "You didn't hear anything? No struggle? No voices?" Thorne shook her head. "The wind was fierce, Captain. It drowns out much." Leaving her office, Poirot murmured, "She hides something, Hastings. The hands of a worker, but the heart of a guardian. Or a thief." Next they sought Dr. Elias Crow in the infirmary, a sterile room smelling of antiseptic and carbolic soap. Crow,
A wiry man in his 40s adjusted his spectacles nervously, his fingers stained with ink from constant note-taking.
"Monsieur Poirot, I'm at a loss,"
he said, his voice high and strained. Sir Reginald was in good health, save for insomnia. I prescribed sedatives, nothing strong. Last night he seemed troubled, muttering about betrayal. I was tending a child with a fever when he was killed. "No witnesses to confirm this?" Poirot asked, his tone mild but probing. Crow flushed. "No. The child was asleep. I was alone." His eyes darted to a medical bag on the table, and Poirot noted a vial of sedative, half empty. "Betrayal," Poirot mused. "A strong word. Did Sir Reginald name his betrayer?"
Pressed. "He was kind," she said quickly. "He cared for the children, for the orphanage. We all admired him." Her fingers twisted a handkerchief, and Poirot noted a faint bruise on her wrist, recent perhaps. Hastings, ever gallant, softened his tone. "You seem shaken, Miss Hale. Is there anything else you can tell us?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, Captain. It's just, the children are frightened. This talk of ghosts doesn't help." As they stepped into the corridor, Poirot's eyes narrowed. "She conceals, Hastings. The bruise, the hesitation, she knows more than she says." The final suspect, Oliver Trent, was shoveling snow near the greenhouse, his broad shoulders straining under a worn coat. His scarred hands gripped the shovel tightly, and his dark eyes glared at the newcomers. "What do you want, then?" he growled. "I told the inspector everything. I cleared the paths yesterday morning, but the garden was locked when Sir Reginald took his walk. I didn't see him after." Poirot studied him. "You were an orphan here, Monsieur Trent. Sir Reginald refused you adoption, no?" Trent's jaw tightened. "Aye, years ago. Picked richer folk over me. Said I wasn't suitable. But I didn't kill him for it." His voice was bitter, but his gaze was steady. "And last night?" Poirot asked. "In my quarters, alone. I don't sleep much." Trent's scarred hands flexed, and Poirot wondered at their strength. As they returned to the main house, the sky darkened, heavy with the promise of more snow. The orphanage's stone walls seemed to close in, their shadows lengthening. Poirot paused in the entrance hall, where a portrait of Sir Reginald hung, his stern face gazing down. "A man of contradictions," Poirot murmured. "Generous, yet ruthless. Loved, yet betrayed." Hastings shivered. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot. No tracks in the snow, a locked garden, and now ghost stories? It's like something out of a novel." Poirot smiled faintly. "A novel, perhaps, but one we shall rewrite with logic." The snowdrop in his hand, the ink on the wound, these are the ink-stained clue. The dawn broke over the Snowdrop Orphanage with a feeble sun, its light struggling through a veil of frost-rimmed clouds. The air was sharp, biting at the nose and ears as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings emerged from their guest rooms, their breath visible in the chill of the corridor. The events of the previous night, the scream, the whispers of ghosts, hung heavy, like the damp scent of old stone that permeated the orphanage. Poirot, immaculate in his overcoat, adjusted his scarf with precision, his grey eyes already scanning the surroundings for clues unseen. Hastings, rubbing sleep from his eyes, muttered, "Slept poorly, Poirot. This place feels like it's watching us." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon ami, it is not the walls that watch, but the people within them. Come, we have work to do. The little grey cells, they demand evidence." Their first destination was Sir Reginald Blackwood's study, a wood-panelled room at the heart of the orphanage, its tall windows overlooking the snowbound garden where the tragedy had unfolded.
The room was a study in order, save for a desk cluttered with ledgers, pens, and a tipped bottle of ink, its contents pooling like a dark omen on the blotter. Poirot's gaze fixed on the stain, his gloved fingers hovering over it. "See, Hastings, this ink. It is the same deep blue as the smudge I observed on the wound. Not blood, but deliberate. A message, perhaps, or a misdirection." Hastings frowned, peering at the desk. "Ink on the wound? That's odd, Poirot. Why would the killer bother with such a thing? And how did it get there?" Poirot tapped his temple. "That, mon ami, is the question. The ink suggests intent, a flourish to the crime. But let us examine further." He sifted through the ledgers, noting meticulous entries of donations and expenses, some marked with red ink, corrections or accusations. A letter, half-written, lay beneath a ledger, its script in Blackwood's hand. "I cannot abide the deceit any longer." The rest was torn away, leaving only lingering on Trent's hands, strong, capable of violence. "And your feelings for Sir Reginald? He denied you a family, did he not?" Trent's face darkened. "Aye, years ago. Said I was trouble, unfit for adoption. Give me work here instead, like charity. But I didn't kill him." His voice was steady, but his knuckles whitened on the shovel. As they left Trent, Hastings whispered, "He's got motive, Poirot. Resentment like that festers, and those hands, he could have wielded the dagger easily." "Perhaps," Poirot murmured, "but motive alone does not make a murderer. We need proof." Their next encounter was with Lady Victoria Blackwood, who swept into the parlour in a cloud of furs and perfume, her elegance a stark contrast to the orphanage's austerity. Her dark hair was pinned impeccably, but her eyes held a calculating glint. "Monsieur Poirot, I trust you're unravelling this dreadful affair," she said, her voice smooth as velvet. "My husband's death is a shock, though we were estranged." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, my condolences. You arrived yesterday, yes? From London?" "Yes," she replied, settling into a chair. "I came to discuss our marriage, or its end. Reginald promised to amend his will in my favour, despite our separation. Now, with him gone—" She trailed off, her gloved hands folding neatly in her lap. "And your whereabouts last night?" Poirot asked, his tone mild. "At a dinner party in London until late. I arrived here after 10, went straight to my room. The staff can confirm." Her alibi seemed solid, but Poirot noted a flicker of unease in her eyes. Hastings leaned forward. "You didn't see Sir Reginald? No argument, no meeting?" "No," she said firmly. "We were to speak today. I had no reason to harm him." Leaving her, Poirot murmured, "Her composure is too perfect, Hastings. An alibi so neat, it invites suspicion." They returned to the garden, where Inspector Japp awaited, bundled against the cold. "Found something, Poirot?" he said, holding up, her hand flying to her mouth. "Monsieur Poirot, I must confess something." The room stilled, all eyes on her. "Yesterday I saw Dr. Crow arguing with Sir Reginald in the study. It was about money, something about unpaid debts. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but it was heated." Dr. Crow's face reddened, his spectacles glinting. "That's nonsense. I never argued with him. I was in the infirmary all day tending to patients. She's mistaken, or lying." Poirot raised a hand. "Calm, monsieur. A disagreement is not a crime, but it is a clue. We shall verify." As the group dispersed, Hastings whispered, "That's a bombshell, Poirot. Crow's already shaky, debts, no alibi, and now an argument." "A red herring, perhaps?" Poirot replied. "Mademoiselle Hale's confession. It is too convenient. She diverts attention, but to what end?" As evening descended, the orphanage grew darker, its corridors lit by flickering gas lamps. Poirot and Hastings retired to the library, where Poirot pored over Blackwood's ledgers. "See here, Hastings," he said, pointing to a series of withdrawals, initialed by Thorn. "Small sums, unaccounted for. Embezzlement? Or something more innocent?" Hastings shook his head. "Thorn's got the means and motive, Poirot, and that key, someone hid it to cover their tracks." Poirot closed the ledger, his expression thoughtful. "The key, the ink, the flower, all pieces of a mosaic. But the picture is not yet clear. We must dig deeper, into the shadows of this place." They stepped into the hall, where a sudden thud echoed from above, like a book falling, or a footstep. Hastings started, his hand on his revolver. "What was that, Poirot?" Poirot's eyes narrowed, fixed on the ceiling. "The orphanage. It speaks. But what does it say?" He moved toward the stairs, his steps deliberate, as the wind outside howled a warning. The shadows deepened, and the air grew heavy with secrets yet to be uncovered. Chapter 4. Whispered dormitories and storage rooms. The air grew colder as they climbed, the scent of dust and mildew thickening. At the top, they found a narrow hallway lined with peeling wallpaper, its floral pattern faded into ghostly outlines. Poirot's gaze swept the floor, noting scuff marks in the dust, recent, irregular, as if someone had moved hastily. "See, Hastings," he murmured, pointing, "the traces of a presence, disturbed but not yet explained." They followed the marks to a locked door, its brass knob tarnished with age. Hastings tried it, but it held firm. "Locked tight, Poirot. Could be a storage room or something more sinister." Poirot produced a small tool from his pocket, a relic of his less conventional methods. With a deft twist, the lock clicked open, revealing a cramped stairwell descending into darkness. "Mon Dieu," he said softly. "A hidden passage, perhaps? The orphanage, it is full of surprises." He lit his pocket torch, its beam cutting through the gloom, and gestured for Hastings to follow. The stairwell led to a basement level, a warren of low-ceilinged tunnels that smelled of earth and decay. Cobwebs clung to the walls, and the air was heavy with the weight of years. Poirot's torch revealed rough-hewn stone, etched with faint markings, initials, dates, remnants of the building's past as a Victorian manor. "These tunnels," he mused, "they date to an earlier time, perhaps for servants or other purposes. Could our murderer have used such a path to move unseen?" Hastings shivered, his breath visible in the cold. "It's like a tomb down here, Poirot. If someone came through, they'd need to know the way. Trent, maybe? He's been here longest." "Perhaps," Poirot replied, his voice echoing faintly. "But knowledge of secrets is not confined to one. Let us see where this leads." The tunnel twisted, branching into dead ends and narrow passages until they emerged in a small chamber beneath the greenhouse. The air here was warmer, tinged with the scent of soil and blooming flowers. Poirot's torch illuminated rows of snowdrops, their delicate white petals
Put through my window, before bed. A shadow by the greenhouse moving fast, then gone, like smoke. Her small frame trembled, and Poirot patted her hand. "Merci, Annie. You are very brave." To Hastings he added quietly, "A shadow that vanishes, perhaps through our tunnel?" They returned to the parlor where Inspector Japp was reviewing notes, "Found anything, Poirot?" he asked, looking weary. "The staff's on edge and those kids' ghost stories aren't helping." Poirot shared their discovery of the tunnel, and Japp's eyes widened. A secret passage. That could explain the lack of tracks, but who knew about it? "An excellent question," Poirot replied. "Let us speak again with Matron Thorne." They found her in her office, poring over ledgers, her face drawn. "Madame," Poirot began, "you have been here many years. Are you aware of tunnels beneath the orphanage?" Thorne's pen stilled, her eyes narrowing. "Tunnels? I've heard rumors, old servant passages from when this was a manor, but they're sealed, or so I thought." Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened on the pen, leaving an ink smudge. Poirot pressed further. "And Sir Reginald, did he know of these passages?" "He never mentioned them," she said quickly. "But he was thorough, always poking into corners. If he found something, he didn't tell me." Hastings interjected. "You mentioned discrepancies in the books. We found evidence of withdrawals, small but consistent. Care to explain?" Thorne's face flushed, and she rose, her voice sharp. "Those were for the children, extra food, medicine. Things Blackwood's funds didn't cover. I took small sums, yes, but only to keep this place running. He found out, threatened to expose me, but I didn't kill him." Her alibi, now corroborated by a maid who saw her in her office, held, but Poirot noted her desperation. Leaving her, they sought Dr. Elias Crowe, who was in the infirmary, his spectacles fogged from the cold. "Tunnels?" he said, startled. "I know nothing of them. I'm here for the children's health, not to explore cellars." But Poirot noticed a tremble in his hands, and the sedative vial from yesterday was now missing from his bag. "Doctor," Poirot said.
"Killer?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet, mademoiselle," Poirot replied. "But tell me, did you ever hear of passages beneath the orphanage?" Her eyes widened. "Passages? No, but the children talk of noises in the walls, footsteps at night. I thought it was just stories." Her bruise, now fading, caught Poirot's eye again, and he wondered at its cause. Hastings pressed, "You saw Dr. Crowe arguing with Blackwood. Anything else you've remembered?" She shook her head, but her hands twisted her handkerchief. "No, Captain. It's all so confusing. I just want this to end." As night fell, the orphanage grew quieter, the snow piling higher outside. Poirot and Hastings retired to the library, where Poirot pored over Blackwood's torn letter. "Betrayal," he mused. "The word recurs, and the ink, always the ink. It is a thread we must follow." Hastings yawned, the day's exertions weighing on him. "This place is a maze, Poirot. Tunnels, ghosts, secrets. How do we make sense of it?" Poirot smiled faintly. "With method, mon ami. The little gray cells, they see what the eyes miss. The tunnel suggests a killer who knew the orphanage's secrets, but the footprint, it is not enough. We need more." As they prepared to retire, a faint scratching sounded from the wall behind them, like nails on wood. Hastings froze, his hand on his revolver. "Good Lord, Poirot, there it is again. What's in these walls?" Poirot approached the panel, his torch in hand. With a gentle push, it swung inward, revealing a narrow passage, its air stale and cold. "The orphanage," he whispered. "It hides its truths, but not from Hercule Poirot." He stepped inside, but as the panel closed behind him, a soft click echoed, a lock engaging, trapping him within. Hastings pounded on the wood, shouting, "Poirot, are you all right?" The darkness swallowed Poirot's reply, and the walls seemed to whisper back, daring him to uncover their secrets. Chapter 5. The Hidden Passage. The darkness of colder, carrying the faint tang of earth and something else, floral, delicate, like snowdrops. The clue from the greenhouse lingered in his mind,
A footprint, not Sir Reginald Blackwood's, left in the soil. Someone had used this passage, and recently. The tunnel sloped downward, its walls damp with seepage, until it opened into a small chamber beneath the greenhouse. The scent of snowdrops intensified, and Poirot's torch swept over rows of the delicate flowers, their white petals glowing like tiny lanterns in the dark. The footprint he had seen earlier was joined by others, a confused jumble in the soft earth, suggesting hurried movement. "Aha!" Poirot whispered. "The killer's path, perhaps." No tracks in the snow, because the murder was not in the garden, but here, or near. He examined the chamber, noting a rusty iron door leading back to the main house, its hinges stiff but recently oiled. A faint smear of ink on the handle caught his eye, blue, like the residue on Blackwood's wound. "The ink again," he mused. "It follows us like a shadow." He tested the door. It creaked open, revealing a staircase to the ground floor. The trap had not been meant to hold him long, only to delay, or warn. Emerging into the greenhouse, Poirot found himself among glass panes fogged with frost, the snowdrops thriving in their eternal spring. He pocketed a small clod of soil with the footprint's impression, then retraced his steps to the main house, where Hastings was pounding on the panel, his face red with effort. "Poirot!" he gasped as the detective appeared. "Thank heaven! I thought you were done for. What happened?" "A test, mon ami," Poirot said, brushing dust from his coat. "Someone wished to unsettle us, but they have only sharpened my resolve. The passage, it is the key. The murderer used it to approach Blackwood unseen, stab him, and retreat, leaving no tracks in the snow. The body was moved to the garden, staged with the snowdrop for effect." Hastings' eyes widened. "Moved? But the footprints, Blackwood's own, leading to the body."
Tunnels. Every orphan hears the stories. Servants used 'em in the old days, but I ain't been down there in years.
His scarred hands flexed, and Poirot noted their strength. Hale gasped, her eyes wide. I found something." She reached into her pocket, producing a silver locket, its clasp broken. "This was near the body, in the garden. I didn't say earlier, I was scared. It's mine, but I lost it weeks ago. Someone must have planted it." Crow snorted.
Convenient, Miss Hale. Trying to shift blame. I saw nothing in the garden, and I was checking patients all night.
Thorne's voice was sharp.
Enough of this. The locket means nothing. Children lose trinkets all the time. Focus on the real evidence.
Lady Victoria raised an eyebrow.
Real evidence? Like your missing funds, matron. Reginald told me you were skimming from the orphanage.
Thorne flushed, but Poirot raised a hand.
Silence, s'il vous plaît. The locket is interesting, Mademoiselle Hale. Why plant it, unless to mislead? A red herring, perhaps.
His gaze shifted to Crow.
And you, Doctor, your sedative vial is missing. Care to explain?
Crow paled.
Stolen, I swear. I noticed it gone this morning. Someone's framing me.
Jap grunted.
Everyone's pointing fingers, Poirot. What's your take? The passage, Poirot said, suggests knowledge and opportunity. The locket, a distraction. The ink, the ink. It ties to the killer's hand.
He turned to Lady Victoria.
Madame, your alibi. You arrived late from London, yes? Can anyone confirm your movements?
Her composure faltered.
The train was delayed. I reached my room after 11, as I said. The porter saw me.
But a telegram, hastily checked by Jap, revealed she had left London earlier than claimed, arriving in Sussex by 9.
I came to plead for my inheritance, she admitted, her voice tight. "Reginald was cutting me out of his will. But I didn't kill him." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "Each of you has motive threads. We must follow them." That night, as they retired to their rooms, Hastings awoke to a shadow moving across his window, a figure, cloaked, slipping into the darkness. "Poirot!" he shouted, leaping up. "An intruder!" They rushed outside, the snow crunching underfoot, but the figure was gone. In the drifts, they found a single glove, monogrammed E.C., Dr. Crow's initials. Hastings clutched it, his breath steaming. "Got him, Poirot. Crow's our man." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Or so someone wishes us to believe. The glove, it is too obvious. Another red herring, perhaps." He pocketed the glove, his mind whirling with possibilities. The storm raged on, and the orphanage's secrets grew heavier, like the snow piling against its walls. Somewhere, the killer waited, their next move cloaked in shadow. Chapter 6. Motives Unmasked. The storm's fury battered the Snowdrop Orphanage, its winds shrieking like a chorus of restless spirits. Inside, the air was thick with tension, the gas lamps casting a sickly glow across the parlor where Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings stood, the monogrammed glove clutched in Hastings' hand. The initials E.C., Dr. Elias Crow's, seemed to pulse with accusation, yet Poirot's gray eyes held a flicker of doubt. "This glove, Hastings," he said, turning it over in his gloved fingers. "It is a clue, oui, but too convenient, no? A killer so careless?" "I think not." Hastings, his face flushed with the thrill of the chase, protested, "But Poirot, it's Crow's! Found right where that shadow fled. He's got no alibi, a missing vial, and now this. It's practically a confession." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Mon ami, a confession left in the snow is no confession at all. It is a lure, a red herring to divert the little gray cells. We must verify." He pocketed the glove, his mind already sifting through the mosaic of clues, the hidden passage, the ink-stained wound, the snowdrop, the planted locket. The orphanage, with its creaking walls and whispered secrets, was a stage.
"Stolen, you say? Tell me, Doctor, what did Sir Reginald know of you that caused his agitation?"
Crow swallowed hard, adjusting his spectacles. He knew of my debts. Gambling, I'm ashamed to say. I owed him a substantial sum, and he threatened to cut my funding for the infirmary. But I didn't kill him. I was in here alone when it happened. Hastings leaned forward.
"Alone. Always alone. No one to confirm your story, Crow? And that argument Miss Hale overheard, about money, wasn't it?"
Crow flushed. "She's mistaken. I never argued with him. She's lying to protect herself." Poirot raised a hand. "Enough, monsieur. We shall see." As they left, he murmured to Hastings, "He protests too much, yet the glove, it is too neat. Someone wishes us to look at Crow, but why?" Their next stop was Miss Lydia Hale, found in the schoolroom, her auburn hair pinned loosely, her hands trembling as she sorted books. The bruise on her wrist, now a faint yellow, caught Poirot's eye again. "Mademoiselle," he began, his voice gentle, "you spoke of an argument, but now Dr. Crow denies it. And this locket, found near the body, you say, yet lost weeks ago. Tell me, what is your connection to Sir Reginald?" Hale's eyes filled with tears, and she sank into a chair. I loved him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He promised to marry me, to take me away from this place. But he lied. He was still tied to Lady Victoria, to his wealth. When I confronted him, he laughed, said I was a fool. Her hands twisted her handkerchief, and Poirot noted the raw emotion in her voice. Jealousy, betrayal, a motive as old as time. Hastings, ever chivalrous, softened his tone. "That's a hard blow, Miss Hale. Did you act on that anger?" "No," she cried. "I was hurt, but I didn't kill him. The locket, I don't know how it got there. Someone's trying to make me look guilty." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "And the bruise on your wrist, mademoiselle?"
But her hands betrayed her, clenching a pen until it snapped, ink splattering her fingers. Poirot's gaze lingered on the ink. "This blue, madame. It matches the stain on Sir Reginald's wound. A coincidence?" Thorne froze, then recovered. "I use that ink daily. It means nothing. Half the staff use it." As they left, Hastings muttered, "She's got the motive and the means, Poirot. And that ink, it's damning." "Perhaps," Poirot replied, "but the ink is everywhere. Like the snow, it blinds us to the truth." Their final interview was with Lady Victoria Blackwood, who met them in the parlour, her furs draped elegantly over a chair. Her composure had frayed, her eyes sharp with calculation. "Monsieur Poirot, this is becoming tiresome. Have you no answers yet?" "Answers come with time, madame," Poirot said. "Your husband's will. You said he planned to amend it in your favour. Yet others say he meant to cut you out entirely. Which is true?" Her lips thinned. "He promised me a share, despite our estrangement. But he was fickle, always changing his mind. When I arrived, he refused to see me. I was in my room when he died. Ask the porter." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your arrival was earlier than claimed, madame. Why conceal this?" She hesitated, then sighed. "I wanted to surprise him, to plead my case, but I didn't kill him. I had everything to gain by his living." Leaving her, Poirot and Hastings retreated to the library, where Poirot pored over the torn letter found in Blackwood's study. "Your secret will ruin us all." The handwriting, Thorne's, suggested financial deceit, but was it more? Poirot's fingers tapped the desk. "The motives, Hastings, they multiply. Thorne's theft, Hale's betrayal, Crow's debts, Victoria's greed, Trent's resentment. Yet the passage, the ink, they point to a single hand." Hastings nodded. "And that glove, Crow's, no matter what he says. But Hale's locket, Thorne's ink, it's a maze."
Shadows claim another victim. Chapter 7. The Missing Child. The cry of little Annie, sharp and piercing, sliced through the Snowdrop Orphanage, shattering the uneasy quiet of the storm-lashed night. The sound sent a jolt through Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, who were already on edge from the discovery of the arsenic vial and the mounting web of deceit. The orphanage, its ancient walls groaning under the weight of wind and secrets, seemed to pulse with urgency as staff and children spilled into the corridors, their voices a cacophony of fear. "Annie's gone," a young boy shouted, his face pale as he clutched a candle. Matron Thorne, her starched uniform askew, barked orders, her usual composure fraying. Poirot, his grey eyes sharp despite the late hour, raised a hand for silence. "Come, mes amis, we must act with method. Where was Annie last seen?" His voice, steady and commanding, cut through the panic like a beacon in the fog. Miss Lydia Hale, her auburn hair loose and her eyes wide with dread, stammered, "She was in the dormitory, Monsieur Poirot. I tucked her in after her nightmare last night. I checked an hour ago. She was there." Her hands trembled, and the bruise on her wrist, now a faint shadow, seemed to pulse with unspoken truths. Hastings, gripping his revolver, muttered, "This is no coincidence, Poirot. The killer's covering their tracks, taking Annie to silence her, maybe. She saw that shadow in the garden." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Perhaps, mon ami, but the little grey cells, they question. A child's disappearance in such a moment, it is theatrical, no? A distraction or a deeper design." He turned to Matron Thorne. "Madame, organize a search of the grounds, every room, every corner. Captain Hastings and I will check the greenhouse and tunnels." Thorne nodded, her face grim, and rallied the staff. Poirot and Hastings, joined by Inspector Japp, hurried through the snow-dusted corridors to the greenhouse, its glass panes glinting under the moonlight. The storm had eased, but the air was bitter, stinging their faces as they pushed through the drifts. Inside the greenhouse, the warmth was a stark contrast.
So, it was dark, and he moved so fast. Poirot exchanged a glance with Japp, who growled, "Crow again. That glove, the vial, now this. I'm hauling him in." "Patience, Inspector," Poirot cautioned. "The child is safe, but her tale, it is another piece of the mosaic. Let us return her to the dormitory and then confront our suspects." They escorted Annie back, her small hand trembling in Hastings' grasp. The other children swarmed her, their relief palpable, but the air remained heavy with suspicion. Poirot, his mind whirling, requested Japp release Crow from custody for a group confrontation. "We must test their reactions, Inspector. The killer hides among them, and Annie's tale may flush them out." In the parlour, the suspects gathered, their faces a gallery of unease. Dr. Crow, released but wary, adjusted his spectacles, his hands shaking. Matron Thorne stood rigid, her eyes darting to the children. Miss Hale, pale and tearful, clutched her handkerchief. Oliver Trent, sullen as ever, leaned against the wall, his scarred hands hidden in his pockets. Lady Victoria Blackwood, her furs draped elegantly, watched with a cool detachment that bordered on disdain. Poirot paced before the fire, its light casting long shadows. "Mes amis," he began, his voice deliberate. "Little Annie was taken tonight, led to the greenhouse by a figure she describes, a man in a cloak, with spectacles. Dr. Crow, this points to you, no?" Crow sputtered, his face reddening. "Absurd. I was in my room under watch. Someone's using my appearance to frame me. First the glove, now this." Hale gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "It's true, Monsieur Poirot. I saw someone in a cloak near the dormitory earlier, but I thought it was a shadow. I didn't want to alarm the children." Thorne's voice was sharp. "This is nonsense. The children are imagining things, stirred up by this tragedy. Focus on the evidence, not ghost stories." Lady Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Evidence? Like your embezzlement, matron, or Miss Hale's convenient locket. Everyone here has secrets, it seems." Poirot's eyes gleamed, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. Hastings whispered, "She's slipping, Poirot. She knows more than she's letting on." Poirot nodded, then addressed Trent. "Monsieur, you wrote the note warning me to beware the orphan's revenge. Why?" Trent's face darkened, but he sighed. "All right, I wrote it. Thought it'd scare you off, keep you from poking into my past. I hated Blackwood, but I didn't kill him." "A red herring confessed," Poirot said, "but it clears the air. Now, Mademoiselle Hale, your locket. Planted, you say. By whom?" Hale's voice trembled. "I don't know, but I suspect Lady Victoria. She was in the garden that night. I saw her from my window near the greenhouse." Victoria laughed, a brittle sound. "Preposterous! I was in my room, as I told you. This girl is desperate to shift blame." Poirot's gaze shifted to the dagger displayed on a table. "The weapon from the kitchen, wiped clean. Yet the ink suggests a hand that writes. Thorne's pen, Crow's prescriptions, or another?" Thorne bristled. "My ink is common here. You're chasing shadows, Monsieur Poirot.
As the confrontation ended, a sudden commotion erupted. Dr. Crow collapsed, clutching his throat, his face ashen. "Poison!" he gasped, pointing to a glass of water on the table. "The sedative! Tampered!" Hastings rushed to his side, while Japp shouted for a doctor. Poirot, unmoved, examined the glass, sniffing it carefully. Arsenic, perhaps, like the vial in Mademoiselle Hale's room. But who had access? Crow was carried to the infirmary, stabilized but weak. Poirot's mind raced, the clues aligning. The passage, the ink, the locket, the glove, now poison. "The killer grows bold," he said to Hastings, "or desperate. Annie's abduction, Crow's collapse, these are acts to confuse, to delay." Hastings gripped his revolver. "But who, Poirot? They're all pointing fingers, and now Crow's a victim." Poirot's eyes narrowed. A victim or a player in this drama? The net tightens, mon ami, but the true killer still dances in the shadows. As they stepped into the corridor, the wind howled.
With its creaking timbers and whispered secrets, seemed to pulse with anticipation as they ascended the staircase, their footsteps muffled by the worn runner. The attic was a cavern of shadows, its low ceiling heavy with cobwebs and the scent of dust. A fallen chair lay near a window, its glass cracked, letting in a gust of icy wind. Poirot knelt, examining the floor, scuff marks, but no clear prints. "A distraction, perhaps," he murmured, "or an accident, but it buys us time to think." They returned to the parlor, where Dr. Elias Crow, now stabilized, sat pale and trembling, a blanket draped over his shoulders. The other suspects, matron Eliza Thorne, Miss Lydia Hale, Oliver Trent, and Lady Victoria Blackwood, gathered under Inspector Japp's watchful eye, their faces a gallery of suspicion and fear. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced like spectres across the walls. Poirot stood before them, his posture erect, his voice deliberate. "Mes amis," he began, pacing slowly. "The events of this night, Annie's abduction, Dr. Crow's collapse, the crash above, they are threads in a tapestry of deception. But the little grey cells, they see the pattern." Japp crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "Get to it, Poirot. We've got a poisoned doctor, a missing child returned, and a killer still loose. What's your theory?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The murder of Sir Reginald Blackwood was not in the garden as we first thought. He was stabbed in the study. The body moved via the hidden passage to the garden, where the snowdrop was placed, a symbol, a mockery. The ink on the wound? Dipped post-mortem, a theatrical flourish to mislead. No tracks in the snow because the snow fell after the crime, covering the truth." Gasps rippled through the room. Thorne's hands clenched, her knuckles white. "Moved? But the footprints, his own, leading to the body." "Précisément," Poirot said. "A clever ruse. The killer dragged the body through the passage, staged it in the garden, and let the snow do the rest." He turned to Miss Hale, whose pale face betrayed her nerves. "Mademoiselle, you confess to an affair with Blackwood, a love betrayed." "Doctor, your collapse. Arsenic, you said. Yet you recover quickly. A mild dose, self-administered perhaps, to cast yourself as victim." Crow's spectacles glinted as he sputtered, "Absurd! I was poisoned! Someone tampered with my water!" Poirot's gaze shifted to Thorne. "Madame, your ink matched. Madame, your ink matches the wound. Your letter to Blackwood, your secret will ruin us all, speaks of embezzlement, yes, but also of desperation. Did you strike to protect your position?" Thorne's face hardened. "I took funds for the children, not for myself. I didn't kill him. My alibi holds. The maid saw me." Lady Victoria laughed, a brittle sound. "All these accusations, Monsieur Poirot, and yet you overlook the obvious. Reginald's fortune, his will. I was to inherit, but he wavered. Someone wanted to ensure it stayed that way." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Madame,
Your knowledge of his habits, the snowdrop for luck, betrays familiarity. Your alibi wavers, like the storm outside. Trent, silent until now, growled, "This is a circus. I didn't touch him, though I hated him for what he did to me." Poirot paced, his voice rising. The clues align. The passage allowed unseen movement. The ink, a deliberate mark. The locket, a planted distraction. But the motive, it is personal, passionate. Mademoiselle Hale, your affair with Blackwood, it left you with more than heartbreak, no? A child, perhaps? Hale's face crumpled, and she sank into a chair, sobbing. "Yes, I'm pregnant. He promised to marry me, but he lied. I confronted him, but I didn't kill him. I swear it." The room stilled, the revelation hanging heavy. Japp's eyes widened. "A child? That's motive enough for murder, Poirot." "Perhaps," Poirot said, "but not alone. The arsenic in her room, the locket, these are too neat, like the glove marked EC. Someone weaves a web to trap her." Crow leapt up. "I told you I'm being framed. The glove, the poison, it's all to ink, the snowdrop, to create a mystery. But they cannot hide from logic." As the group dispersed, a sudden shot rang out from the garden, sharp and startling against the storm's wail. Hastings drew his revolver, shouting, "Good Lord, Poirot! What now?" They rushed to the window, peering into the snow-swept darkness. A figure, Trent, his shovel raised, stood near the greenhouse, firing at shadows that melted into the night. "Thought I saw someone," he shouted as they approached, his breath steaming. "Just shadows, maybe." Japp grabbed his arm. "Reckless, Trent! You could have killed someone." Poirot's eyes narrowed, scanning the snow. No new tracks, only Trent's. "Another distraction, perhaps," he murmured. The killer grows nervous, and the net tightens. Back inside, Poirot gathered his thoughts, the clues swirling. Hale's pregnancy, a motive for rage. Crow's convenient collapse, a possible ruse. Thorne's ink, a damning link. Victoria's greed, a shadow over her alibi. Trent's shot, a desperate act or misdirection. The orphanage's walls seemed to close in, their whispers growing louder, urging Poirot toward the truth. "Hastings," he said softly, "the killer is among us, watching, waiting. But the little grey cells, they see through the darkness." As the fire sputtered, a faint creak from the corridor suggested another presence, another secret waiting to be unmasked. Chapter 9. The Final Twist. The sharp report of Oliver Trent's gunshot still echoed in the ears of Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings as they stood in the snow-dusted garden of the Snowdrop Orphanage, the storm's ferocity now a low growl in the night. Trent, his shovel gripped like a weapon, panted heavily, his eyes wild with suspicion. "I swear, I saw someone out here," he insisted, his voice rough as gravel. "A shadow, moving near the greenhouse, thought it was the killer, come back to cover their tracks." The moonlight glinted off the snow, revealing no fresh footprints save Trent's own, a solitary trail leading to where he stood. Poirot, his overcoat dusted with frost, studied the grounds with piercing grey eyes.
Cauldron of tension. The fire's glow casting long shadows across the faces of the suspects.
Miss Lydia Hale, her auburn hair disheveled, sat trembling, her confession of pregnancy still hanging heavy in the air. Dr. Elias Crow, pale but recovering, clutched a glass of water, his spectacles glinting with unease. Matron Eliza Thorne stood rigid, her calloused hands clasped tightly, as if holding back a flood of secrets. Lady Victoria Blackwood, her furs draped elegantly, watched with a cool detachment that masked her nerves. Oliver Trent, summoned back, slouched against the wall,
his scarred hands hidden in his pockets. Inspector Japp, his patience fraying, paced near the door, muttering about arrests. Poirot stood before them, his posture erect, his voice a steady cadence that commanded attention. "Mes amis," he began, pacing slowly. "The murder of Sir Reginald Blackwood is a puzzle of many pieces, but the picture now emerges. The shot tonight, the abduction of little Annie, the poison in Dr. Crow's glass, these are not random acts, but threads in a web spun by a clever mind. Let us unravel it." Hale, her voice breaking, interrupted. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I didn't kill him. Yes, I loved him. Yes, I'm carrying his child. But I didn't plant the locket, and I didn't poison Dr. Crow." Her tears fell freely now, and Hastings, ever gallant, looked ready to comfort her. Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, mademoiselle. Your confession, it is a piece, but not the whole. The locket, the arsenic, the bruise on your wrist, they suggest involvement, but perhaps not murder." His gaze shifted to Crow. "Doctor, your collapse, so dramatic, yet you recover swiftly. A mild dose, self-administered, to cast yourself as victim, no?" Crow's face reddened, his hands shaking. "I told you I was poisoned. Someone tampered with my water. I'm no murderer." Thorne's voice was sharp. "This is absurd. You accuse us all, Monsieur Poirot, yet the evidence is scattered. Ink they provided."
Let us reconstruct. Sir Reginald was stabbed in his study, not the garden. The body was moved via the hidden passage, staged with the snowdrop to suggest a garden killing. The ink, your ink, Doctor, from the prescriptions you write, was dipped on the dagger to create mystery. The footprints in the greenhouse, they match your shoes, not Blackwood's, and your spectacles found in the passage with your prescription number etched on the lens. Crow's face drained of color. "Lies! The spectacles were stolen, like the glove." Poirot continued, undeterred. "The motive? Sir Reginald discovered your secret experiments on the orphans, sedatives laced with untested drugs sold for profit. He threatened exposure, and you could not allow it. You stabbed him in the study, dragged him through the passage, and placed the snowdrop to mock his philanthropy. The glove, the poison, you planted these to frame others, even poisoning yourself with a mild dose to play the victim." Japp's eyes widened. "Blimey, Poirot, that's a stretch. The spectacles, how'd you find them?" "In the passage, Inspector, hidden poorly. And the sedative vial, also in the passage, bore traces of your experimental compound, Doctor. The locket, a red herring planted by you to implicate Mademoiselle Hale. The ghost stories, spread by her fear, you encouraged to muddy the waters." Hale sobbed. "I didn't know. I thought the stories would keep the children quiet, not help a killer." Crow laughed, a harsh, desperate sound. "Prove it, Poirot. You've got nothing but theories." Poirot produced a small cloth bundle from his pocket, unwrapping it to reveal a pair of spectacles, their lenses glinting in the firelight. "These, monsieur, were found where you dropped them. The prescription matches yours, and the ink on your cuff, the vial in the passage. They betray you." Crow lunged, his face contorted with rage, but Japp and Hastings seized him, pinning him to the chair. "You can't prove it," he shouted, struggling. "It's all circumstantial." Poirot's voice was calm, final. "The little grey cursed. You'll see."
As Crow was led away, the parlor fell silent, the fire's crackle the only sound. Hastings, shaken, murmured, "Good Lord, Poirot, you did it. But that note, it's still nagging at me." Poirot nodded, his expression troubled. "Oui, mon ami. The note
It is a shadow that lingers. We must tie it before we leave." The orphanage's walls seemed to sigh, their secrets partially unveiled, but one final mystery whispered in the dark, waiting to be unmasked. Resolution and farewell. The parlor of the Snowdrop Orphanage was steeped in a heavy silence, broken only by the soft crackle of the dying fire and the distant moan of the storm outside, now waning as dawn approached. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst the chaos of revelation. Dr. Elias Crow, handcuffed and slumped in a chair under Inspector Japp's watchful eye, glared with a mixture of defiance and defeat. The other suspects, Matron Eliza Thorne, Miss Lydia Hale, Oliver Trent, and Lady Victoria Blackwood, sat in a semicircle, their faces etched with exhaustion, relief, and lingering fear. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood by Poirot's side, his expression a blend of awe and unease. The murder of Sir Reginald Blackwood had been solved, but one thread, the mysterious note warning of the orphan's revenge, remained untied, a shadow that nagged at Poirot's meticulous mind. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes silent on the worn rug, his gray eyes scanning each face with the precision of a jeweler assessing gems. "Mes amis," he began, his voice a measured cadence that commanded attention. "The murder of Sir Reginald Blackwood is no longer a mystery. Dr. Crow, with his illicit experiments on the orphans, struck to silence Blackwood's threat of exposure. The hidden passage, the ink-dipped dagger, the snowdrop placed in the victim's hand. These were the strokes of a cunning but flawed design. Yet
Scrap of paper. Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Madame, to Hercule Poirot, no detail is too small. The note, it is not a prank, but a key. It speaks of intent, of knowledge. And I believe I know its author." He turned to Thorne, whose eyes widened slightly. "Madame Thorne, you wrote the note, did you not? Not to confess murder, but to warn of dangers within these walls, dangers beyond Dr. Crow's crime." Thorne's hands trembled and she rose, her voice low but steady. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, I wrote it. I meant to warn you of the orphanage's troubles, not just my own misdeeds, but the whispers of cruelty, of secrets Blackwood uncovered. I feared for the children, for what might come if his investigations continued. I slipped it under your door after Annie's scream, hoping you'd see the bigger picture." Poirot nodded, his expression softening. "Your intent was protection, madam, not deception. Your confession ties the final thread." He turned to the group. "Let us review the crime for clarity. Dr. Crow, driven by greed and fear, learned that Blackwood had evidence of his experiments, sedatives laced with untested drugs, administered to orphans for profit. Blackwood, a man of contradictions, was both benefactor and tyrant, his philanthropy masking a ruthless streak. He confronted Crow in the study, and there Crow stabbed him with a kitchen dagger, a weapon of opportunity. The body was dragged through the hidden passage to the garden, staged with a snowdrop, a cruel irony, symbolizing the purity Crow corrupted. The ink-dipped post-mortem was a flourish to confuse, drawn from Crow's own pen. Crow sneered, his spectacles glinting. "You paint a pretty picture, Poirot, but it's all conjecture. No jury will convict on footprints and spectacles." Japp tightened the handcuffs, his voice gruff. "We've got enough, Crow. The vial in the passage, your ink, the spectacles, plus your own collapse, staged to throw us off. You're done."
Poirot continued undeterred.
The red herrings were many, Madame thinned. And the will? Will it stand, now that he's gone? Japp shrugged. That's for the lawyers, Lady Blackwood. The orphanage gets most of it, from what I hear. Poirot turned to the group, his voice rising. The orphanage. It is a place of hope tainted by human folly. Dr. Crow exploited its children, but his crime is exposed, and justice will prevail. The snowdrop, a symbol of purity, blooms again in truth. As Crow was led away, his protests fading into the corridor, the parlour felt lighter, as if the walls themselves exhaled. Hastings, rubbing his hands by the fire, murmured, You've done it again, Poirot. But that note, Thorne's warning, it's chilling. What other secrets does this place hold? Poirot's eyes were distant, fixed on the portrait of Blackwood above the mantel. Secrets, mon ami, are like shadows. They linger, but they cannot hide from the light of reason. The orphanage will heal, under new stewardship, perhaps. He glanced at Thorne, who nodded, her stern face softened by resolve. The children, gathered in the dining hall, were quieter now, their fear easing with the dawn. Annie, clutching her blanket, approached Poirot, her eyes wide. Is the ghost gone, sir? Poirot knelt, smiling. Na petite. There was no ghost, only human failings. You are safe now. She hugged him, a rare moment of warmth in the cold case. As Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, the snow had ceased, leaving a pristine blanket over the grounds. The train back to London awaited, its whistle a promise of return to order. Japp, shaking Poirot's hand, grinned. You're a marvel, Poirot. Solved an impossible crime, as always. Poirot bowed slightly. The impossible, Inspector, is merely a challenge to the little grey cells. Order is restored, but the human heart, it remains a mystery. They boarded the train, the orphanage receding into the mist. Hastings, settling into his seat, mused. A grim case, Poirot. Blackwood's death, Crow's experiments. It's a dark chapter.